All right, welcome, ladies and gentlemen. And today, I've seen a lot of comments on the Fanatec forums and the Fanatec groups, or even just in general, about how to set up your force feedback. And I see a lot of people not doing it properly. So today, we're going to just do a quick video of how to set up your force feedback in iRacing. It's going to be pretty simple, and it's only going to take you a couple of minutes. I see a lot of people do this incorrectly. I have a Logitech, but this is going to go for the same Fanatec, Logitech, Moza, doesn't matter. This is how you're going to want to set up your force feedback for iRacing to allow you to have the maximum range and get the most out of your equipment. Okay, so the first thing you're going to do is make sure that in your software, whatever software you have, you're going to make sure that your operating range is going to be set to the maximum range. Okay, you don't want to set it lower to 900. You just want to set it to the maximum range. You also want to set it to the maximum strength. Don't worry about anything else, dampeners, filters, anything like that. That's going to be personal preference. The biggest thing is in your software, you want maximum range, maximum strength. Okay. For your pedals, you don't really need to worry about these. That stuff's gonna be pretty simple. So we're gonna go into the options menu. Make sure that you do not have use custom controls for this car on yet. That's gonna come later. Okay. Pretty much one of the first things you're gonna do is when you come into your controls, you're going to set up your controls on your steering wheel. You're going to set up a generalized control scheme that's going to work for just about every car. And then you're going to leave a couple of buttons open for special slots, such as maybe taking a tear off, or DRS, or if you're using a super formula car, you have the push to pass. Same thing in IndyCar, you have the push to pass, or maybe you have a swappable ERS. You leave a couple things open. But you're going to have a couple things that you're going to want standard on pretty much every single car, such as your pit limiters and moving your black boxes, probably your push to talk. I also have some sound settings that I can adjust in case someone's kind of loud. I can turn them up or down. I can also turn my overall audio up and down. So that's one of the first things I would do is just kind of set your controls up in a way that they're gonna go for every single vehicle, so that way you can customize them later on. But you don't have to change too much, right? So leave a couple buttons open that you would want to use for some of the other things for certain cars, right? Because certain cars are gonna have different controls that you're gonna want, but they're normally gonna be like only a couple of buttons, right? Like I said, doing your tear offs or maybe flashing your lights. All right, so we're gonna go into the options menu, go into drive, and we're going to set up our steering first. Now, our steering, like I said, we have it set to the maximum. Now, as you can see, mine says 1056, so the maximum steering on my wheel is 1080, but that can vary a little bit. Even though it's 1080, sometimes the software doesn't have it all the way over there. So just make sure you go all the way to 0, hold it there for a second, come back around, go to the other side, and then one key thing that I like to do is instead of just setting the wheel down to 50 and kind of looking at it, what I'll do is I'll leave this screen open, and then I'll go to my software. Like I said, I have Logitech, but um, you might have Fanatec. I open my software and see where my wheel is in the software. Okay, so right now I'm reading at 0 in the software, and then so I know it's at 0. So I'm gonna go back and hit done. So now that my steering wheel and my base is set to that, I'm gonna do the 90-degree rotation. Now I'm going to go ahead, instead of sitting here and just turning it and then going to 1080, I'm going to do the exact same thing. I'm going to make sure that I am at 90 degrees in my software. And as you can see, I'm at 90 or at 89. So I'm going to move that a little bit more, make sure I'm at 90 degrees in the software, and that's going to give me the most accurate point. Okay, so at 90, it puts my lock to lock range at about 1071. That can change or whatever, like I said, based off of the way the software interacts. Okay. I'm going to hit done. So now my wheel has the correct range, okay? Now you don't need to change this in your software for any car. So if you go from a Mazda, right, the game of iRacing is automatically going to adjust your lock to lock range per vehicle, right? So if I go to drive a GT3 car, I'm only going to have like 540 degrees of rotation. You don't have to open up your software or change that based off of the vehicle. The game is going to do that for you. So you shouldn't have to change any of this for iRacing, okay? Now, setting up the force feedback is where it's going to get a little weird and where people kind of get this wrong. You don't want to use auto, okay? You don't want to use auto. What you're going to do, so my max wheel force is 11 Newton meters, okay? I'm going to keep that there. Now, because I have a direct drive wheel, okay, I'm going to use linear mode, okay? That's because I have a direct drive wheel, okay? Well, now what that linear mode does is it affects the curve in how the forces work, right? So if you read this bottom, if not checked, it will boost smaller forces and decrease larger forces, right? Essentially what that means is instead of the curve being a straight line, because if you have direct drive, you can just have that straight line, the curve will actually curve a little bit and you'll lose a little bit in the middle, but you'll gain a bit more feel in the lower end. So if you're like lightly turning the wheel, and you'll gain a bit more in the higher end when the wheel gets really heavy. So if you have direct drive, you want to have this checked. If you do not have direct drive, so say you have like a CSW or a CSL Elite or a Thrustmaster, something that's either belt driven or something that is gear driven, like the Logitech G29 or 923, one of those, then you want to uncheck this. Now, you need to look up your wheel maximum Newton meters for what wheel you have. This is a big mistake that a lot of people do. Okay, you want to look it up and make sure you have that set to the maximum torque of your wheel. So I believe if it's a Logitech G923, it's 2.2. A CSL Elite, I believe, is 6 Newton meters. I think a CSW might be 8 Newton meters. You can Google that. You can look up your documentation to find that. But make sure, sorry, I'm kind of sick. Make sure that you have that set, okay? Now, right here, if you click this, you have max force and strength, okay? So there's a weird difference in this. I tend to just leave mine on strength and adjust it from there. I don't go to the max force. Strength seems to be fine. I think this is more so of just like a situation of just what number you want to see, and I don't think it really has a massive effect on it. But now if we go to intensity, okay, if you go to intensity, what this does is it's going to give you a baseline for the auto set. So when we have the intensity going, if we want to be like middle ground, I guess, and avoid clipping, you can have that set to like 50% or even lower. If you want to maybe have maximum force all the time and risk a bit more clipping, then you can have that set high. And what clipping is clipping means when the game tries to send more force feedback than your wheel can kind of handle, right? That's it. So we got this all set up now, okay? So now what we're going to do is hit done. Now, once we hit done, we're going to go ahead and let me just change. See, I'll change my force feedback strength to like 0 or 5 or whatever. So we change our force feedback to just 0 for right now. Now, what's going to happen is we're going to just do some laps, okay? And we're just going to drive around. Now, as we drive around, what's happening is the game is calculating how much... Ooh. 0 force feedback is not ideal. What's happening is the game is calculating how much force feedback that it's going to want to start sending to the wheel, okay? So you're just going to drive around for a little bit. Don't sit there and crank the wheel. Just try and drive. Keep it on the road. And we're just going to keep doing that and just drive like normal. Now, to explain why you have maximum force feedback, the reason you're going to have that is because it's going to give you the most range. So if you take your wheel and say I have 11 Newton meters of maximum torque, and I set mine, and there's the auto set. We're going to keep going for a little bit and just give it a couple laps to really dial in the auto set. But what happens is if you say set your 11 Newton meter wheel down to like 8 or whatever, you lose range, right? The whole point of having like that super high Newton meters is not necessarily that you're going to be using a lot all of the time. But what's going to happen is you're going to add more range, which means you're going to have more feeling in all scenarios. Whereas if you set it down lower, you're going to lose feeling, right? So if you have a Logitech G29 and you're holding and gripping the wheel, you're not going to feel as much in the low end and in the high end or even in the middle end. So you just need to make sure that when you're doing this, that's why it's important to have it set to the max, right? So now we've done 2 laps, just driving around. Now I'm going to set to auto. So now I'm at my automatic setting, right? And it's at 16.9. That's what it says that I want. Now if I set, now you can see the wheels a little bit harder to crank, right? And you can see on the top right of the screen that F, that's the force, right? If it goes into the yellow, that's okay. If it goes into the red a little bit, that's fine too. But you only really want it to hit the red if it's really in a spot that's gonna be like a 1 out of 100 scenario, right? Not a scenario you're gonna hit a lot. You can see that will change. You see how the auto changed a little bit. But after those 2 laps, it's only going to change probably like 0.5, maybe 1. You see it's not changing much, right? So you could do that all day because it's going to continuously calculate and dial in exactly where you want it to be. But you don't need to change that very often, right? So 18 seems to be a good middle ground, right, for this car and for my stuff. So one thing I like, though, I might be a bit weird here. I don't like having like a weird 0.1 or whatever. So what I'll do is I'll set it all the way back down to 0. And then just bring it all the way back up to 18. And there we go. So now your force feedback is set up on your wheel properly, right? And it's very easy, you know, very easy. So I hope you guys enjoyed that video. I didn't want to make it super complicated for you guys. But now let's make sure that we have this set for every single car. So we'll go ahead and open this up, go back up to the options. Now at this point that you have everything set, now you can use custom controls for this car. And now what happens is that's going to save for this particular vehicle, okay? So this is why it's important to set use custom controls for the car at the end. Okay? So the reason is we set up all of our generalized controls that we're going to want. And now we have set up our controls at the end for custom settings, right? So now what'll happen is if I go into another car, then I could just drive around and set up maybe those couple of buttons that I might want for maybe headlight flash or whatever, and then set it up and use custom controls again, and it's not going to change the controls of the other cars, okay? Now, how do I delete custom controls? So we're going to go through this real quick because this is something that is kind of annoying to do, but this is probably going to be a good starting point for you guys. So if we go into documents here, and let's do it from the beginning. If we go into documents, and then we go into Iracing, and then we go into setups, okay, and then we pick a car. So we just in the Mazda. Where is it? MX-5. Modified today, so that's the one. So if you go into Mazda and you see Joy Calibration, this right here is your calibration file that's saved, okay? So if you have not done this and you feel like you're always changing your force feedback and having to adjust everything and change controls on all the cars you drive, what you can do is you can go to every single car and you can just delete these and then just start over. I've done that multiple times when I start making mistakes in my calibration, stuff like that. But what you can do is just start over, and just change your controls. I wish there was a button that just deleted all of your controls. It would be very helpful, but you don't have that. But you know, other than that, very simple, very easy way to set up your force feedback in a way that makes a bit more sense. Like I said, I see a lot of questions about this on the Fanatec forums and everything. But thank you guys for watching. You guys have a good one. Peace.